Welcome into the Solo Shot Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Dom Manna. Happy Solo Shot Saturday, everyone. Man, I've been saying this for such a long time, as we're now, we're 10 days away from the Tokyo series to open up the 2025 Major League Baseball season, officially with games that count. It's March 8th. The amount of teams, we always say, to be the best, you have to beat the best. Imitation is the, nicest form of flattery. But the Dodgers, Andrew Friedman, who is considered one of the, best GMs in baseball, flat out said, we're going to get everything we need now because it costs so much more at the trade deadline. We're going to pay for these veterans. We're going to fill these roles now and just spend dollars, both present day as well as deferred. We're going to spend dollars instead of spending prospect capital on, these role players, these guys that, serve a purpose but are not, stars to help fill out your roster and compete. Quality Q, Jose Quintana, just signed a 1-year, $8 million deal with the Milwaukee Brewers. The Brewers that just won the division last year, the Brewers that, traded Devin Williams and didn't do much this offseason, they go out there and they sign Jose Quintana in March. And Jose Quintana is a guy that, if the Brewers aren't contending for some reason, they typically are in the mix in the NL Central, that they can flip Jose Quintana at the trade deadline for a top 30 prospect from another organization and continue to be, the savvy, smaller market team that the Brewers are. But then you look out at free agency, and there's plenty of impact players. On the reliever market, there's still guys like David Robertson and Joe Kelly, who, are trusted veterans that have very good stuff and have been very good recently. JD Martinez, 300 career home runs, was, a well above league average hitter last year for the Mick Mets on their big run. Teams would rather give, league average bats the DH role instead of, picking up a guy like that raises your offensive floor, which raises your chance to win games, which also can be flipped if he produces well enough for a prospect for money. But the thing that is the lowest of the hanging fruit is the starting pitchers. There's not a single rotation in baseball that couldn't use an extra arm. And yeah, I'm talking about the Mariners, who George Kirby is now, starting the year on the injured list. We're talking the Dodgers, where, Ohtani hasn't thrown on a mound in months. Kershaw's going to start the year on the IL. Like, you need bodies, you need arms. No matter if you're a top tier team or a bottom of the barrel team, you need innings, you need quality. And right now, we are sitting here on March 8th, and these 4 pitchers are still unsigned. Lance Lynn, Kyle Gibson, Spencer Turnbull, and of course, James Paxton, Big Maple. James Paxton's the only one that I somewhat understand. He's had injury issues throughout his entire career, and he got DFA'd after performing not so great with the Dodgers last season. But as John Smoltz loves to say, his famous quote, if you throw left-handed and you have a pulse, you can pitch in the big leagues. There's some guys that just can't see the ball as well out of a lefty's hand. And James Paxton has a resume that is worthy of being, in the mix for a 5th starter role somewhere. But when it comes to, Spencer Turnbull, he was actually very good for most of 2024. This is a guy who, can produce out of the rotation as well as out of the bullpen. And I just don't really understand it. You have a guy who pitched to a 2.65 ERA last year, you know, and that was in 17 games, pitched 54 innings. I know it's a small sample, but that's a guy who, can spot start for you, can be a long man out of the bullpen, and he costs you just money right now. But a Spencer Turnbull, if he's pitching to a 2.65 ERA at the All-Star break, that's a guy you have to give up a top 30 prospect for. But the most egregious, I think, is Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson. And I'm not saying that Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson are in their prime anymore. They're both well past the age of 30. But these are guys who still are positive win players that will take the ball every fifth day. They will eat innings. They will save your bullpen. And they're great guys to have in the clubhouse. They're trusted veterans. Guys that, have been in rotations for over a decade. And Lance Lynn has gotten calls about being a closer this offseason because the team's not willing to give him the ball every fifth day. But he wasn't even signed to do that. He's still out there. And I know Lance Lynn hasn't done himself a ton of favors with his foul territory appearances. I think he's said some things that may have scared a few teams off. But if you're a team that needs starting rotation depth, you need a long man out of the bullpen, you want to convert him into a high leverage reliever because of the strikeout stuff that he still has. That's all well and good. A Lance Lynn, if he's pitching to his career averages at the All-Star break, is going to cost you a top 20 to 30 prospect in your system. Kyle Gibson, a top 20 to 30 prospect in your system for a half-season rental. But instead, these teams, these evaluators, these analytical minds are saying that these guys are not worth it. They're not worth money. But if they perform, they're worth a top 20 or 30 prospect, controllable prospect when we have injuries in the rotation. Every rotation needs a guy. People always say you want a quality rotation or you want a bunch of guys, you want quantity. You want quality in quantity. You want these guys to have depth, to have people to call up. And it's just insane to me that we're sitting here and there's 4 guys who I would trust to take the ball and start for a baseball team that are unsigned here in March. Jose Quintana wasn't signed until this month. Andrew Friedman, who everyone is chasing the Dodgers in Major League Baseball right now, has said, we're going to pay for it right now because we don't want to pay for it later when the price goes up. And there's all these guys out there. There's been injuries in almost every single rotation already this spring. There's been so many, guys who were scheduled to be in the back half of rotations that, have had a velocity dip or haven't looked good this spring, that you can bring in this older guy to mentor them or to compete with them or to start the year in the rotation to be replaced by them. It doesn't matter. It's just money. It's just money. These guys don't have qualifying offers connected to them. They don't have, a unruly track record. These guys have all pitched in the big leagues. These guys have all started games and been, relatively good recently. It doesn't make any sense to me. Kyle Gibson especially has been one of the most underrated pitchers of this era. I think he's someone that, people are going to be really surprised when he actually gets selected to be one of those, guys who's a pitching coach down the road or something like that. He pitches to an ERA, in the low 4s, but it's just shocking to me because this is a guy who, just posts. He'll start 30 games for you. He won't miss time. 150 plus innings available out there for you right now. I just don't get it. I don't get it. Teams aren't going to catch the Dodgers without depth. And, there's guys that are out there readily available for these teams still to sign in March. I understand if, you're worried about a long-term commitment or spending $100+ million on like an Alonso or a Bregman, why those free agencies get dragged out. But there's no telling me why, it's taking this long for guys who have been starters in rotations and have been quality to not get signed, even to minor league deals, with a chance to compete for that fourth or fifth starter job on a team. Whether you're a bad team and you want to raise the floor of your team, you want to give your team a better chance to win games and then flip that pitcher at the trade deadline for a prospect, or, you're a good team that just needs some depth. You need some innings to kind of like just shield yourself from the storm of this marathon of a season, get through it, save your bullpen, wait for some other guys to get back. There's so many reasons to sign these guys, and they're just still out there. So kudos to the Brewers for getting Jose Quintana. I'm sure he'll pitch to a mid-3 ERA and be really solid for them this season. But regardless, pitching doesn't grow on trees. I know you can throw out, anybody now that has mid-90s velocity, but, in terms of taking the ball every fifth day, having that kind of, consistency, a guy that's going to go 4, 5, 6 innings, a start, save your bullpen, that's got a ton of value. And it maybe not be worth a top 20 or 30 prospect. I wouldn't want to pay that, but I'll sure as hell, if I'm a GM, pay money for it. And I just don't get why these teams are so reluctant to spend the money on these guys and, give a younger control arm, an opportunity to, make the back half of the rotation, as opposed to like bringing in that veteran who can not only help the young guys, but also help you weather the storm if something happens to that young, unproven guy, whether it's performance or injury. The list goes on and on. And, spring fever is truly in the air. We're getting to the point where teams are starting to cut people from the major league camps. And, there's a ton of guys who are impressing, and, tons of highlights that are being posted all over social media. It's really, really fun this time of year because baseball is right around the corner. We're getting really excited. You got the mix of young talent with, major leaguers getting back into things. You have old faces in new places. There's a lot to love about spring training baseball. And I think it's almost, that time where people are just, ready for the baseball season to be back. There are tons of, lines that are already being put out there. People are already talking about favorites for, the awards and people to lead in certain statistics and team win totals and, World Series odds and all that great stuff. And we will be talking about that on next week's episode of the show, the last show before regular season baseball commences. I will be doing my prediction show. So I'll be going through the divisions, telling you what I think, and as well as, picking the award winners. But just to give you a preview of the futures and the guys that are out there, using FanDuel Sportsbook for this, because that's my preferred gambling platform. Not a sponsor, but MLB has so many fantastic, opportunities here. And I think if you look at, the odds to win the World Series, you won't be shocked to see that the Dodgers are the overwhelming favorites. Then if you look at the National League, the Braves are the second best odds at 950. Philadelphia Phillies at plus 1,000. New York Mets at plus 1,100. In the AL, the Yankees, the reigning AL champions, plus 800. The Baltimore Orioles plus 16, the Boston Red Sox plus 18, and the Texas Rangers and Houston Astros plus 2,000, respectively. So those are the heavily favorited teams coming into the year. If you have plus 2,000 odds or better, you are considered a World Series contender. You're considered a real possibility to take home that piece of metal, as Rob Manfred likes to say. But that is that's the World Series odds. But when you go deeper into these different awards and divisions, the Yankees, Orioles, and Red Sox are in that order to win the division. they're giving the Rays and Blue Jays no chance to win the AL East. Plus 850 for the Rays, plus 1,300 for the Toronto Blue Jays, a team that added Max Scherzer, added Jeff Hoffman, added Anthony Santander, and Andres Jimenez, has been relatively healthy this year. Plus 1,300 odds in a fantastic division. The AL Central, super scary. The Twins, plus 210 are favored. The Detroit Tigers, plus 250. The Kansas City Royals, plus 280. And the Cleveland Guardians, who won the dang thing last year, plus 310. They're giving the Chicago White Sox plus 25,000 odds to win the division. I don't think that's going to happen. In the AL West, the Houston Astros are favored just over the Texas Rangers at plus 180. Texas Rangers plus 190. Seattle Mariners plus 200. The Angels and Athletics are giving no shot, plus 2,100 and plus 2,500. In the NL East, the Braves are favored, plus 135. Philadelphia Phillies, plus 180. New York Mets, plus 210. Nationals, plus 10,000. Marlins, plus 25,000. In the NL Central, the Cubs are favored at minus 105. They're heavily favored. The Milwaukee Brewers, who won the division last year, plus 290. The Cincinnati Reds, who a lot of people are picking to win that division, plus 490. The Pittsburgh Pirates and Paul Skeens, plus 1,000. And the St. Louis Cardinals, plus 1,000. The NL West Dodgers, minus 650, the most heavily favored team to win their own division, as well as the World Series. San Diego Padres, plus 950. Arizona Diamondbacks, plus 1,000. San Francisco Giants, plus 3,700. And Rockies, plus 50,000. Rockies have the least percentage odds of winning their division, which I agree with. There are 4 teams clearly ahead of them. But it'll be interesting to see where I differ from FanDuel versus where I'm in line with those teams. But the awards is really something that means a lot to me. It's not just about the Hall of Fame and, the legacy, but these awards are super important. And if you look at, the MVP odds in the American League, they're actually favoring Bobby Witt over Aaron Judge, which was shocking to me to read. I'm a huge Bobby Witt Jr. fan. I think he's one of the most exciting players in the game of baseball. But to have him at plus 270 and to have Judge at plus 300 when Judge is still in his prime was shocking to see. Gunnar Henderson is third with plus 650. He's going into the year with a little bit of a lower body thing. I don't love his odds of winning an MVP if he's going to miss time. Corey Seager, plus 1,100. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in the contract year, plus 1,400. Yordan Alvarez is a DH, plus 1,600. Mike Trout, 7th best odds in the American League, plus 1,800. Julio Rodriguez, who I talked about as a breakout this year, plus 2,000 to win American League MVP. Jose Ramirez, Mr. Disregarded, plus 2,200. Rafael Devers, plus 3,000. Jarren Duran, plus 5,000. And then everyone else is past plus 5,000, including my boy Marcus Semien, who is plus 10,000 to win the American League MVP this year. I think coming off the 2024 season that he had, that he's not a real MVP candidate, but I just wanted to mention him there for those of you that like to razz me about Marcus Semien. On the National League side of things, Shohei Ohtani is favored to win the MVP, plus 145. Like I said, he has not thrown off the mound. So I don't know how much pitching he's actually going to get done this year. Can a full-time DH win back-to-back MVPs without the pitching? We'll see. I don't think he should be favored if he's not going to pitch, 15 to 20 starts. And right now, I don't know how many starts he's actually going to make on the mound. Juan Soto, plus 550. Fernando Tatis Jr., plus 800. Mookie Betts, plus 950. And then there's a drop. Bryce Harper, plus 1,400. Kyle Tucker, plus 1,700. Francisco Lindor, plus 2,200 after finishing second last year. Elly De La Cruz, plus 2,500. A lot of people have been calling him a dark horse to win it. Freddie Freeman, plus 3,500. Ketel Marte, who if he stayed healthy last year would have been right in the thick of it, plus 3,500. Ronald Acuna Jr. coming back from the ACL, plus 3,500. Corbin Carroll, who I think is going to take another big step this year, plus 4,500. Jackson Merrill is with him there, and Jackson Chourio as well, plus 4,500. They're giving Trey Turner and Matt Olson plus 5,000 odds, which, just unbiasedly looking at it, a guy like Marcus Semien, who's coming off a not so great year, Matt Olson and Trey Turner are both coming off years that, aren't good compared to their recent career. And they're getting half as good of odds as a Marcus Semien to win the award. And I know the AL is a little bit deeper in terms of MVP caliber talent, but it's just interesting to see those kind of lines. But the thing that really shocks me is the Cy Youngs seem to be wide open. And it's because the FanDuel is essentially giving two guys in each league the chance to bet against the field. In the AL, Tariq Skubal plus 350 to repeat as Cy Young winner. Garrett Crochet, Red Sox ace, plus 370. The next closest is Cole Reagan at plus 900, Logan Gilbert plus 1200, and Pablo Lopez and Jacob deGrom, who has no shot of winning the Cy Young this year, plus 1600. In the National League, Paul Skeens plus 200, Zach Wheeler plus 600, and then you have to go all the way to plus 1,000 for Blake Snell, plus 1,500 for Corbin Burns, plus 1,700 for reigning Cy Young winner Chris Sale repeating, and plus 2,000 for Yoshinobu Yamamoto. I'm just really stunned to see that. I know pitching is really hard to predict. I know injuries are so much more common with pitchers. But to have it be like 2-horse races going into the year and not, flattening out the odds in both the American League and the National League, I think is a little foolish. I think that it's very likely if you take, Skubal and Crochet versus the field and Wheeler and Skeens versus the field, that you very well could have, two guys. Who was predicting Chris Sale to win the Cy Young last year? Absolutely no one. Very few people I heard predicted Tariq Skubal to win the Cy Young. So they were not anywhere near the favorites. And now, you got two guys in each league that are the clear favorites. If you go lower, I think that's where you have the chance to, make some money and to have some fun, because there's a lot of guys, that are well past plus 2,000 odds that have just as good of a chance to win the Cy Young Award, to have that kind of season as a Paul Skeens or a Zach Wheeler. I'm not a betting man. I'm not going to be putting a ton of money on these future bets, but just wanted to give you an idea now, sitting 10 days away from Major League Baseball. I know we're a little bit further from real opening day, but those games are going to count, and they're going to count towards these awards. They're going to count towards, these divisions and the World Series standing. And it's going to be really interesting to see how these odds move throughout the rest of the spring training, how they move through the early parts of the season, and which bets end up really paying off, and which, leading favorites actually hold on to, accomplish what they are favored to do. Here at the Solo Shot Sports Podcast, we can throw back down the third base line to this day in baseball history. And March 8th had a few interesting notes. It's kind of a weird time of year for baseball because there's not a lot of regular season baseball being played. There was a contract extension for Babe Ruth, making him the highest paid athlete in the world at $80,000 a year. There was the implementation of the Atlantic League testing out the bigger bases and limiting the shift, which ended up in 2019, ended up being rules that were implemented in 2023. But I want to wish a happy 72nd birthday to Red Sox and Baseball Hall of Famer Jim Rice, 72 years old. I had the pleasure of meeting Jim Rice at a store opening while I was in college up in Massachusetts. Really awesome guy. I've loved listening to him on Nesson, and just, a guy that really likes to give back to the game. But Jim Rice, I think, gets overshadowed in baseball lore, and part of it is because of what happened. Was Ted Williams was considered, the greatest Red Sox of all time. Still a lot of people believe he is. He was followed up by Carl Yastrzemski, Hall of Famer, has a lot of the team records, played his entire career there a long time. Triple Crown, impossible dream Red Sox. Jim Rice was that next left fielder. 3 straight Hall of Fame left fielders. Pretty crazy, right? It's like the Green Bay Packers quarterback situation. There's very few things where that kind of stuff happens. Jim Rice, from 1977 to 1979, was one of the best players in Major League Baseball. And I think that it gets extremely overlooked because it was a shorter peak. When you look at Jim Rice's career from that stretch, that 3-year stretch, he was a 6.4 WAR player averaging 115 runs, 209 hits, 31 doubles, 42 home runs, 129 RBIs. That was good enough for a 153 OPS plus. He was a top 5 MVP finisher all 3 of those seasons, an all-star all 3 of those seasons, led the league in slugging twice, OPS once, total bases all 3 years, RBIs once, home runs twice, triples once with 15, hits once, at-bats and plate appearances and WAR. He led the league with in his MVP season in 1978, right smack dab in the middle of that. He was not an elite defender by any means. He was not, that kind of guy, but as just a weighted hitter, a guy who was able to accumulate in just 16 seasons, which really is more like 14 because his, first season in 1974, he played 24 games, had 67 at-bats. In his final season in 1989, he only played in 56 games. 2,400 hits, 2,452. He scored 1,249 runs, 373 doubles, 79 triples, 382 home runs. So, extra base hit machine. You're talking about 373. Talking about 828 extra base hits from Jim Rice in 14 seasons, which is, absolutely insane. That's averaging 59 extra base hits a year, which, anybody would take that in the heart of their lineup. I know Jim Rice is, considered a controversial Hall of Famer because he only has 47 career WAR. He was, like I said, not a great defender, but a guy who, truly, truly was a feared hitter in his day, despite, falling off in the 80s. He still had 2 seasons where he was a top 5 MVP finisher in 83 as well as 86. And, he finished his career with a 128 OPS plus. So despite, falling off from that prime from 77 through 79, Jim Rice still ended up having a Hall of Fame career, still ended up being a truly, truly great baseball player. Drove in nearly 1,500 runs in 14-ish seasons of games. That's a Hall of Famer. And, he's 72 years old. He's super, approachable to the public. And, he's public facing and, a guy that I think should not be overshadowed or underappreciated while he's still with us. Happy birthday, Jim Rice. Hope you have a fantastic day. And I hope the rest of you spend some time after listening to this, go to his baseball reference page and appreciate the kind of career that you had. A 298 career hitter, an MVP, 8-time All-Star, 2-time Silver Slugger, and was born on this day in Anderson, South Carolina, 1953. Now, today is a bad example of this. I prepped the show a couple days ago with these topics. The warm weather is, on the horizon. It's a little cold here in the Northeast right now. There's some winds, but warm weather is on the horizon. I can feel it in my bones. It is, part of the spring fever. It's part of baseball season coming back. All of those things. It's really, really exciting to me. And, I think that Major League Baseball, and summer and warm weather, it's just, the serotonin that a lot of us need in our lives. And I'm just so excited for, this cold front to go away, for it to, be less like winter and more like spring, and enjoy, some warm weather, enjoy nature, enjoy baseball, both on the radio and at the ballpark. It's very, very exciting that this is happening. I know a lot of people out there are sharing the same sentiments as me. And it'll be really, really fun to, go into real spring, go into the baseball regular season. We'll be back next week with episode 99, which will have all my 2025 yearly predictions. I appreciate each and every one of you for spending part of your Solo Shot Saturday with me, Scott, Mookie, Orlando, Jake, everyone that was in the chat. I appreciate you. For those of you that enjoyed the show, make sure that you like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already, and share this show, whether it be audio version or the YouTube version, with someone who loves the game of baseball as much as we do. I'm Dom Manna, and I'll see you guys next week.